Charlie Parsons did not recognize his great-aunt Sybil when he stepped out of the railway station. He remembered her as a lovely woman with a blooming voice who wore always bright clothes and usually hats. But now she looked pale and thin, frighteningly strange with her dark glasses and a thick woolly scarf. She wasn't the same person at all.
"It's not a long walk to Nightwing Towers," she said softly, stooping down for him to give her a peck on the cheek. "Though I do get very tired these days." Together they walked through the deserted streets of the Belladonna housing estate. Spiderweb cracks stretched from the corners of grey, empty windows. Gardens were overgrown. In the distance, Charlie could see demolition trucks and cranes. Almost all of the tower blocks had been pulled down. Occasionally, clouds of dust rose like billowing mushrooms.
"The whole place has to go," said great-aunt Sybil, her voice almost a whisper. "I'm afraid my brand new little bungalow isn't ready yet."
"Not to worry, Auntie," said Charlie rather nervously. "I've never spent a whole day in a high-rise block of flats before. I bet you have a great view of London." They turned a corner and stopped before a parade of shops. All were deserted, except for a news agent set in the middle. "Wait here, Auntie," said Charlie. "I'll only be a moment." He wondered if she still had her sweet tooth. Perhaps an ice cream would cheer her up. She stepped inside to the shop. A small girl wearing a grubby baseball hat, shorts and trainers stood beside the counter.
She was unwrapping a chook ice but looked deadly serious. Suddenly she pulled a small yellow card out of the wrapper and read it. "Is that the one, Freya?" asked the man behind the counter as he leaned forward to look at the card. She shook her head angrily. "No, and I'm running out of time." She took a big bite of her chook ice and stormed past Charlie. "Hey," said Charlie as he was pushed aside. "Don't mind Freya," said the shopkeeper. "She's trying to collect the entire Dracula Delights series. I think it's turned her head."
He pointed at the poster on the wall. It read, "Dracula Delights Ice Creams. Collect all the special free cards in our Monster Facts series. All you need to know about vampires." Charlie screwed up his nose. "Perhaps I should try this Dracula Delight. 2, please." Charlie unwrapped the ice creams, which were shaped like wooden sticks. He hurriedly glanced at the cards and put them into his pocket. Outside, his auntie was standing on the edge of the pavement, looking up at Nightwing Towers.
The block rose into the sky like a strange grey watchtower. Dark birds circled above the roof. The more he stared at Nightwing Towers, the more uneasy Charlie felt about the place. It was the last block of flats on the estate. "I live on the second floor alone now," said great-aunt Sybil. "There are still few families on the ground floor. Who lives on the floors above?" he asked.
"Nobody lives on the floor above," said Grand-auntie Sybil. "Nobody." Charlie screwed up his eyes and gazed along the top floor balcony. The flats looked empty. He thought he saw one of the birds land on the balcony edge. Then, a moment later, a figure dressed in black seemed to stand there instead. Charlie blinked, and the figure vanished. He felt the hairs on the nape of his neck bristle. As they walked toward Nightwing Towers, the girl in the baseball cap stood on the corner and watched them carefully in silence.
Aunt Sybil's flat seemed very dark. She had drawn all the curtains and continued to wear the sunglasses and scarf. She showed Charlie his room but helped him unpack. He took out his wash bag, comb, and a small mirror.
"No mirrors, please," cried his aunt suddenly. "I don't allow them in the house." "Why haven't you began? Why don't you go out and play?" his aunt suggested. She threw a towel over the mirror. "I need to lie down for a bit. I'm feeling rather strange again. It's the sunshine." Charlie followed his aunt out into the hall. She disappeared into the darkness of her bedroom and closed the door. He scratched his head. On the wall was a photograph of Great Aunt Sybil at the seaside wearing a Kiss Me Quick hat. Sadly, he remembered how she used to be. He started at the picture as he emptied his pocket onto the hall table. Finding the cards from the shock eyes, he slid them under the lips of the frame so he wouldn't lose them. Then he put on a clean pair of jeans and decided to get himself a drink. As he entered the kitchen, he heard a scuffing outside the window, followed by footsteps.
Charlie ran out onto the balcony. The small girl he had seen in the shop shot past the door. Then she stooped, leant over the balcony. An enormous black bird was hovering in the air a little way off. Suddenly, it made a strange cry and soared upwards. She craned her neck to see where it had gone. "I bet he's gone for the top floor," she said. Charlie laughed. "It's only a bird." The girl turned on him sharply. "A bird? That was not a bird. Who are you anyway? I saw you earlier with Mrs. Parsons."
"I'm her nephew, Charlie. I live in the country, but I'm visiting for the week." The girl stared at him for a moment, then seemed to relax. "Thank goodness," she said. "I'm Freya and I live downstairs." "What was that then, if it wasn't a bird?" asked Charlie. "That was Mr. Cube." She gave him a friendly smile. "And to think I was afraid I might have to battle against the power of darkness all on my own." The late afternoon sun threw long shadows into the stairwell of Nightwing Towers. They shimmered like trembling fingers. The building felt as cool as an ancient tomb. Charlie and Freya crouched beneath the stairs on the second floor, staring down at the lift door.
Suddenly, the twang of the lift cable echoed in the shaft. "This is it now." "Shh," said Freya. "The lift is coming down. That will be Mr. Cube. He likes to fly up to the top floor, but he sometimes uses the lift to come back down." Charlie couldn't understand what he meant by fly up. He held his breath as the lift door opened with a cluck. A man dressed in a long black cloak, wearing dark glasses, very like Charlie's aunt's, peered round the door. Then he stepped out. He wore a yellow straw bolter with a wide black hatband. Beneath a white collar was a smart bow tie. Charlie watched in wonder. That man's face was whiter than talcum powder.
Slowly he made his way towards the entrance. Then he paused, checking that there was nobody about. Suddenly he stretched out his arms and flapped his cloak. A puff of smoke came from nowhere. After 5 seconds, in his place was a small black animal. It squealed and stretched. It was a wide skeletal wings. As it flew upwards, Charlie realized it was a bat. In an instant, it had gone. "That was a man," gasped Charlie, and he changed into a bat. "Correction," said Freya seriously. "That was no man, that was a master vampire." Charlie was almost speechless, but he could not deny his own eyes. Freya went on to explain that Mr. Cube was only moved in 5 months ago.
She had watched the removals van arrive. There had been no furniture, only a collection of fine coffins. For a moment, Charles' blood turned to ice water. He shook his head. "No, there isn't such a thing as vampires." "Okay, I'll give you a further proof," he said. "But then you must help me. In a while, Mr. Cube will have returned to his flat." Sometime later, Charles followed Freya through the gap in the boarded-up doors, which led to the 3rd floor.
Here there was another staircase. The place felt like a huge empty castle. The footsteps rang out to the slope as they slowly climbed the stairs to the top.
This way, said Freya when they reached the top floor, slowly and quietly. Bats hang from the ceiling like fat umbrellas. She led them out on the balcony on tiptoe. Most of the windows and doors were boarded, but there were two that were not. She peered through the first window and whispered, "He's returned." She beckoned to Charlie. A grubby curtain had been drawn, but there was a gap. The room was empty, dark and silent, but in the center was a coffin.
A yellow straw hat lay on the chest of the sleeping figure, which rose and fell with each breath. Other single people like your aunt lived on the second floor, Freya whispered. Then she moved closer to him. Then they started to change. Charlie's eyes widened. "Change," he said. Despite the warmth of a summer day, he began to shiver. Miss Cube has hidden them, somewhere until he's ready to command them to do his bidding. That is what master vampires like Dracula and Miss Cube do. Then spell can only be broken by the death of a master vampire, said Freya. Only then will they return to the normal state.
Suddenly it hit Charlie, but my aunt was changed. She would wear dark glasses, and she became pale and thin. Exactly, said Freya. She is the last person living on the second floor. Why do you think I've been collecting these cards in the Dracula the Läst series? I need to find out what to do before it's too late. Charlie gulped and turned away. He moved along from Freya and glanced in the window of the next door flat. At first he could not believe his eyes and moved his face near the window. In a neat row was a line of 6 coffins. 5 were occupied with figures in deep sleep, and one, lined with purple satin, was empty. Look, he said.
Freya rushed to his side. So that's where the previous tenants went. This must be where he hides his victims until he's ready. Do you see that empty coffin? Asked Freya. Charlie nodded. I bet that's for your aunt, she said. I wish I knew what to do. There's one more card in the Dracula the Läst series. That's the one that explains how to get rid of vampires. Charlie remembered the crisp 20-pound note his mother had given him and had an idea. When he got back from the news agents, Great Aunt Sybil was still in her room. Freya was sitting on the balcony. Charlie gave her the big card box he was carrying. I bought every shock ice in the shop, he said. The last card must be here.
An hour later, Charlie and Freya sat together at the end of the balcony, surrounded by a pile of Dracula's Delight ice cream wrappers. They had still not found the final card. That night Charlie dreamed of old castles set on misty mountains, of towers with tiny windows like eyes into which bats silently flew. In his dream he flew towards one of the windows, and as he got nearer and nearer, the castle dissolved and repaired as Nightwing Towers. His heart beat like a hammer, thud, thud, thud. Charlie cried out with a start and glanced at his bedside clock. It was past midnight. Someone was banging on the front door.
Charlie rushed out of his bedroom and stumbled down the passageway. Through the frosted glass he saw Freya's outline urgently beating at the door. He opened the door wide. She stood trembling in the moonlight. Look behind you, she pointed past him. I've been keeping watch. He flew in through the window. Charlie turned on his heels. Great Aunt Sybil's door was ajar. From the room came the sound of horrible, menacing laughter. Miss Cube pushed open the door. A long black cape billowed behind him. His face was shining milky white in the moonlight, bigger and brighter than before. But most frightening of all, his eyes were intense and fierce. Miss Cube's mouth yawned wide.
he hissed, displaying a pair of white pointed teeth.
Freya stared desperately about her. Then her eyes fell on the old photograph of Great Aunt Sybil, which hung on the wall. The 2 yellow chalk ice cards were still fixed in the frame. "Charlie," she cried, "that's the one." She rushed to the picture and read the back of one of the cards. For a moment she hesitated, then dived into the kitchen. Great Aunt Sybil stood beside Mr. Cube, as if she were in trance. A shaft of silver moonlight beamed through the front doorway. She no longer wore sunglasses, and her eyes were points of fire, just like his. 2 puncture marks showed on her neck. The scarf had gone. She was almost transformed.
Then suddenly, from out of the kitchen came Freya. For a moment Charlie couldn't believe his eyes. She held the toaster in her hands. With a cry of victory she ran at Mr. Cube and held the toaster up to his face. Mr. Cube stared at the toaster. His jaw dropped and his eyes grew wide in disbelief. A wail, long and dreadful, rushed around the room before disappearing on the floor below. Mr. Cube crumpled like a rag and collapsed into a heap of empty clothes. Charlie rushed forward and kicked the cloak with his foot. There was nothing left but a pile of grey cinders and twirling cloud of steam.
Charlie and Freya sat quietly with the Great Aunt Sybil. Each had ice cream, several bars of semi-methyl, Dracula's Delight, lie on the table. There was whole list of way to kill vampires, wooden stakes, clover of garlic, and so on. But I chose the first method, explained Freya.
Charlie read the card again, hardly believing that he had the solution to the problem all along. Vampires must not see their reflection. If you hold a mirror in front of a true vampire, his own image will destroy him, turning him into dust. How clever, said Great Aunt Sybil with a smile. Freya grinned at her own reflection in the bright mirror chrome of Great Aunt Sybil's toaster. Meanwhile, outside in the darkness, the black shapes which had been circling the roof of Nightwing Towers flew away into the night.